Almost there. There we go. Mark, over to you.
Well, thank you. And what a show we have tonight. We're listening to Randy Prunty, Donna de la Perrière, Lea Graham, Keith Donnell, Paul Hoover, Maxine Chernoff, and François Luong. And of course, in many ways, this is a celebration of Maxine's newest book of poetry, a collection released by Mad Hat Press called Light and Clay, Maxine's new and selected poems. It's getting rave reviews, and I'm absolutely delighted to have Maxine here today with her friends. I understand some of the features will also be reading some of Maxine's work as well, as will I at some stage in the show. But also to let you know that we're doing a free giveaway today. So if you would send us in the chat your mailing address and your email address and your name, if you live in the United States, we will get you a copy of Maxine's new and selected poems next week. Yeah? So bear that in mind and hope you hang along for the whole show. But before we get to the feature, first we're going to hear from my co-host, Jeffrey Cyphers Wright, who received his MFA after studying with Allen Ginsberg. He's also a publisher, a critic, eco-activist, impresario, filmmaker, puppeteer, and artist. Jeff is the author of 19 books of verse, including Blue Lyre and Party Everywhere. His poems have appeared in the Cafe Review, New American Writing, the Brooklyn Rail, the Hurricane Review, and Posit. Jeff's recent work also appears in Best American Poetry, New York Insiders, and Contemporary Surrealist and Magical Realist Poetry. His latest book is a book of sonnets with his own artwork called Doppelgangster, which recently came out from Mad Hat. And Jeff won the Sir Vision James Tate Prize. And I think his book is coming out from them pretty soon. Jeff also publishes Live Mag. What you got for us today, Jeff? You're still muted, my friend. You're still muted.
Oh, wow. Sorry. Yeah. So anyway, Tony Kitt, shout out. This is I just mentioned this artwork here, Fuel for Love. It's AI generated. I took a line from the poem and I said, a marriage of a mirage and a carriage, Sean Landers style. And Sean is an artist and he paints nothing like that whatsoever. But anyway, thank you, Mark. It's a joy to be here, see so many friends, and for this great day of poetry with these wonderful poets. Congratulations, Maxine. And Paul had his book out a couple of years ago too, which we'll hear about, which is fabulous. So I'm going to read this poem called But Seriously. Somewhere, a library of stars is busy studiously twinkling. Somewhere, a rainbow is having second thoughts about wearing fur. Somewhere, a cricket is practicing safe sex. Somewhere, a vegetarian is being eaten by a self-absorbed, narcissistic cannibal. Somewhere, a lost compass explores its retirement options. Somewhere, a ladder is falling down drunk. Somewhere, an organ grinder spanks his naughty monkey. Somewhere in the Museum of Orgasms, a phone rings, and it's for you. And thank you very much. And I could say it's for you, Cassandra, but I'll just read your bio first, okay? And it is a real pleasure. Cassandra is a charming host who's been with Lit Balm for quite a while now, going into the 5th year with Mark here altogether. Cassandra Atherton is an award-winning prose poet and international expert on prose poetry. Her prose poetry is widely anthologized and has been translated into Japanese, Chinese, and Korean. Cassandra has published more than 30 books and is currently writing an illustrated book of prose poetry on the Hiroshima Maidens with funding from the Australia Council and the Victorian government. Cassandra co-wrote prose poetry and introduction and co-edited the anthology of Australian prose poetry. She's commissioning editor for Westerly Magazine and professor of writing and literature in Melbourne, Australia. And she's from Australia, in case you didn't know. And also she's an ekphrastic expert. Please welcome Cassandra Atherton.
Thank you. Thanks, Jeff. I'm going to read a short prose poem. In Australia, it was International Women's Day on Friday, so I'd like to read a prose poem called A Room of One's Own, with references, of course, to Virginia Woolf. A room of one's own. You weigh me down like stones in a coat pocket until my incandescence is stifled and my nugget of pure truth is stripped back to a room in my grandparents' house in the suburbs where I once wrote poetry. The white desk is still there, pushed against the bay window. If I open the top drawer, I know that my old fountain pen will still be there, bite marks on the lid from long days at school. The garish hippopotamus curtains are still too red. The carpet is more of an electric blue than I remember. A little fish of an idea becomes a cat without a tail. How do I write the space between my heart and my pen? I would like to introduce the intrepid Mark Vincennes. I know you're waiting for it like me. Here we go. Mark Vincennes is an Anglo-Swiss American poet, a fiction writer, translator, editor, publisher, designer, multi-genre artist, and musician. He's published over 40 books of poetry, translations, and fiction, including more recently this stunning array: The Pearl Diver of Irunmani with White Pine Press, A Splash of Pave Paint with Spite and Dival, a chapbook, An Alphabet of Last Rites with Chavina Bava, The King of Russia is Drunk on Stars with Lavender Ink, The Mayfly Codex with Spite and Dival, 3 Telltale Love Signs with Subpress Collective, and just recently, The Visitation, a novelette from Sir Vision. Mark is also a prolific translator, and he's translated from, the regulars know this one, German, Romanian, and French. He's published 11 books of translations, most recently An Audible Blue, Selected Poems 1963 to 2016 by award-winning Swiss poet and novelist Klaus Merz. And for all of you that remember, it won the 2023 Massachusetts Book Prize for Translated Literature. His own work has been translated into many languages, including Japanese, Chinese, Russian, French, Italian, Romanian, Greek, German, and Icelandic. He is currently working on a novel entitled The Age of Occasions. Vincennes is editor and publisher of Mad Hat Press and publisher of New American Writing. Here we go, people. He's lived all over the world, from Brazil to China to Iceland to India. He was born on Matilda Hospital on the Peak in Hong Kong, but he now lives on a farm in rural Western Massachusetts, overlooking Herman Melville's Greylock Mountain, Melville's inspiration for Moby Dick, where there are still more, here we go, eastern worm snakes, timber rattlesnakes, and diamondback terrapin than bipedal hominids. I love it, Mark. Can you follow such a good bio with a brilliant poem?
I'll try. This is called, and this comes from my book that I'm working on at the moment. It's called Megalopolis. It's about the birth of a city. And this poem's called And Still There Were Other Sparks. In the original fires, through augury and divination, the founding smithies discovered we were divinely ignited as the heavens parted, and like a spark to a pyre, the essence of our primeval selves seeded to a barren, empty earth. But in that rocky, prehistoric era, the smithies say, volcanoes brewed and bubbled and sluiced, and eventually half the world was smoky, singed and melting. And they also say we walked the hot lines with bare feet long before she cooled. And according to the smithies, from the ashes emerged a bird whose fiery plumage lit up the atmospheres, created clouds and snows and incandescence. And across the planet, the bird was known by many names, from phoenix to griffin, to the Furaribi, or perhaps the 12-winged Cholkidiri, who apparently dwells near the surface of our sun. But we called her Dear Mother Oil, the will of the one searing through the blood of earth. And later, to meet more popular demand, the Smithies invented other myths with rocket ships and aeroplanes and cyber twits. And with these two, we metaphorically charged and re-entered the world again. But also, once again, in retaliation, the universe expanded. Every so often, she has to inhale. And for us too, eventually it was not enough. The primal urge to seed goes beyond, deep into the great unknown and beyond space and time and faith, beyond eternity, into a mirror of altered realities, until eventually we just burn out. And now I am delighted to introduce the first of our featured readers today, who is Donna de la Perrière. Donna is the author of 5 collections of poetry, 3 books, Works of Love and Terror, Saint Erasure and True Crime, all from Talisman House, as well as 2 chapbooks, Night Calendar and First Love, which came out with the Poetry Center Chapbook Exchange Collection. She founded and curated San Francisco's Bay Area Poetry Marathon Reading Series from 2004 till 2019, and she teaches at San Francisco State University and lives in Oakland with poet Joseph Leese and their cat, Emily Dickinson. Welcome, Donna.
Thank you so much, Maxine and Mark and Cassandra and Jeffrey and everyone for allowing me to be here. And actually, just as of 1 month ago, there is now a second cat whose name, entirely predictably, is Lorca, because of course it has to be a poet. So I'm going to share my screen rather than my noggin here today. Let's see whether I can do this. Okay, there we go. So I'm so excited and honored to be here to celebrate this important book and Maxine, who, let's face it, is one of our greatest contemporary poets, as we all know. The work of Light and Clay, like all of Maxine's work, is both exquisite formally and musically, and it also has this extraordinary level of emotional and even spiritual intelligence. Her work always shows me how postmodern poetry can be both whip smart and as full of real life as Woolf or Tolstoy. She's a tremendous, tremendous gift to literature and to us all. I am going to start off. I'm going to read reading one of Maxine's poems from the collection Without, and then read 5 or 6 little ones of my own. So here's Maxine. Without immortality. Vendor's angels smile in the belfry, gaze at time and meanings posed, twisting on a rope of air, she leads to love. If love is falling, I'll lose my wings for you, he says, muted sound, but words below. And now he falls and loves the crash. Dirt never smells so sweet. Boy, she's good. All right. And here are a few of mine. For you who are being obliterated, you enter a space. It is the closest thing to not having a body. Lights blink on and off intermittently. Darkness hangs from cables overhead. Everything is becoming erased around you. You must determine how to walk to the exit. You must determine whether the exit exists. Lights are hung on dark cables. They glow or change with color. The walls are mirrors reflecting an exit, assuming, of course, there is an exit. There is a stunning, yawning vertigo. There is magic. There are fireflies. Wouldn't you love to walk through this? Wouldn't you love its blackness and polish? The garden. Anyone who's been in San Francisco will recognize this. The garden. They lived in a city built on air. Each day, the topography recalibrated, shifted into another arrangement. What were hills became clouds. What were clouds became harrows. What were harrows became vacantness, polished and fixed. They had ideals and a certain willingness to make irrevocable choices against a backdrop of catastrophe, ground shifting underfoot. Dervishes hurtled above the hills on filaments of money, panic stinging the daylight beneath its bright, burned ceiling. And this poem is about growing up female. Mock trial world. Pretty integer says, come and play, says dirty girl, says thumb stump, says wrap up your troubles in the old kit bag and swallow. Smile, 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 smile. Flailing Jenny goes, tilt-a-whirl goes, fleece a daisy, paints shimmy mock trial. Flint's fairy toning, then tears out a spigot, hammering, wheedling, up in the craw. Time tilts wise, runs thunderfault, flicker, flies off at angles, unfurling the flaw, unwinds, divvies bad faith, quick, get your money's worth, tearing, teeming, fast over ground. Harbinger cover, lean in, hear the hard sell, tethering, wheeling, sliced silly pawn, be a good girl, a target, a hard luck, a hammer, plant salt seed, plant ashes, then all fall down. I am trying to say fire. What are you trying to say? I am trying to say fire. I am trying to say immaculate. I am trying to mean it. I am trying to say God. I am trying to say heaven. I am trying to say dark, to say, look here, we're burning. And now here is one that is not on my handy dandy visuals here. It's called Prayer. When the rain stops, everything beside the river gathers tension. 92 stars in the night sky, 92 roads to go home. In the hull of the body, an atom's eruption and dispersal, a siren blasting a warning as piercing as God. It's October and children hang crepuscular sheets in the orchard, little lambs, little scatter, little tarnish in the bowl. When we call a body a vessel, we call a vessel a star. We call a star a loose blast from the deep empty to nowhere. In the darkened room, a mother repeats, I love you, I love you. That is all she remembers. That is all she can say. The cross above her head, a string and cup phone to the night sky, a shell to the ear through which she hears the largest ocean. And last one is for my late mother and all the luminous old women. Mère. The old women rose with the moon, twisting their gnarled arms across the sky. They hovered over the places they had walked. They passed the houses where they had lived as girls, the dark pine-arched roads where they had received first kisses and clutched at boys or other girls in the quickening dark. They passed the hospitals or rooms where they had birthed children. They passed the graves of children. They passed their own graves. They tore light out of the stars and wore it as cloaks. Other light they flung to earth, where it split apart and shattered. They crowned each other with the wrecks of their longings and despairs. They fell apart, cohered again. They spun with the weather. They watched the world flame out, ignoring them at best or hating them. They rose over the ridge like a troop of fixed stars. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. And thank you for your dedication to Maxine and wonderful reading of Maxine's poem as well. Next, we hear from Lea Graham, who is a writer, editor, critic, and translator who lives in Hyde Park, New York. Lea is the author of 2 poetry collections, From the Vernon Hotel from Salmon Press, and How and Helix and Where and Here and You from Notel Books, a fine press book, and 3 chapbooks. Recently, she edited the anthology of critical essays From the Word to the Place, the work of Michael Anania, who I think is here tonight, and won the Michel Boisseau Poetry Prize. Lea is an associate professor at Marist College, where she's been on faculty since 2007. Welcome, Lea. Oh, and by the way, there is also an upcoming book of essays on Maxine as well, but I'll leave Lea to tell that to you guys.
Yes. Yes, so Celia Bland, who I think is here. Are you here, Celia? I think you are. Anyway, so Celia Bland and I are co-editing a book of essays on Maxine that was, sort of birthed through the Denver Quarterly Festschrift that just came out this last fall. But I'm putting this all out to all of you. We are looking for other essays in all kinds of ways. So if you've been a student of Maxine's, if you want to write on Maxine's poetry, we're still working out. Do we want to also address her fiction? Or is that anyway, but that's up for debate. If you do want to do that, contact me. You can just write in the chat and I'll give you my email. But yeah, we're on that. Celia, don't worry. We really are on this. Okay. And Maxine, don't worry. We are. Okay. I'm going to read a couple of Maxines from Light and Clay. The first one, Vernal. I love this poem. Vernal. To sit with you among the starlings, yellow-eyed, their paths hieroglyphic, and throw some crumbs our way. Delayed heartbeat in the pistol, waiting under snow, how the earth loves fullness and resolve here. Where jasmine's pungent sweetness fills the room, from here we're missing like a pair of lamps, lighting her tousled hair, reaching his pillow. His hand reaching toward her fragrance once again. A rough diamond underground, a sheen beneath questions. Simple how lives double, paths narrow to a declivity of hours. The second Maxine poem I'll read is called Dear Dictionary, and it's also just because I've got a, don't we all have a love affair with the dictionary? I mean, oh, it's okay. But you'll see how this will segue in a minute. But yeah, Dear Dictionary, again, Light and Clay. Dear Dictionary. Pigeons telecommunicate on the square where Shakespeare's copper skull stands speechless. Wind at an acute angle when 7 p.m. dawns. Can leaf be a verb, discolor a pigment? What page, when named borders, blind and snake-like, fill the news with all the dying, when arteries swell, with landscape and invisible seasons shake the globe, marking the progress of armies, silkworms, and sight. All that the named eye apprehends in the reliquary world, the invisible hand summons. Thank you, Maxine. So I think I'm going to read from my second book tonight, from the Hotel Vernon. So I guess there's a few things I should say. One, it's about a hotel in Worcester, Massachusetts, over 100 years old. I worked there for a while, lots of characters. But also, as I was writing the book, I began to add, beyond the sort of narrative poems, I began to add to them through these kind of OED poems, and looking at some sort of antiquated words and that sort of thing. So I'm going to read a few of those. And the first one's called Hotelhood, which is what starts the book. Hotelhood. Noun, the fact or state of being a hotel. Again, rare, antiquated. Where I found myself that summer bartending at the Vernon, leaping over the longest oak bar in the city that first night to wake the young Pole who had laid his head on a table, the drool starting to pull, and when he finally wobbled up, Patsy Cline booming crazy from the jukebox, grabbed a $1 draft from Joe's grip, yelled Zimny Pivo, and chugged before running down Millbury Street into the night of this neighborhood once called the Island, then Green Island, now the Canal District, though the canal lies beneath Harding Street like a quashed rumor. A revolving door of cops hustling meth couples, slow dragging the checkered tile at noon, Orbison's only the lonely reeling out the orange door, a list of scratched patrons hidden behind the register with crucifix and Hershey bars, Mike, the human Ferris wheel, Big Jugs Genie, Fat Ron, and Damien for dealing in the John, visits from the baker who lived upstairs, fed his mice crackers and nips, shat himself so regularly that Captain Bob withheld his $25 until he bathed, and him pacing bar to street, muttering, "It's my fucking money." Stories of first love spinning in jolting white cities, carnival rides, doing it in Indian Lake rowboats, last loves and practical jokes on Water Street. Each night, the warrior came for his mail, shadowboxed himself in the mirror, bellowing, "I'm the warrior, want to dance?" Circuitous, roundabout, recurrent, so much talk, a chaplet of sojourning, a refrain with endless verses. Why are you here? What do you need? Where are you going? Can I help you? The second poem I'll read is kind of a lark, because I had to, when I was working at the Vernon, I didn't work there very long because it was too much. You can imagine, it was too much. But you know, people would come in and play the jukebox over and over and over. So I had this relationship with the jukebox. But also the whole bar had this whole theme of like, you know, nautical. And so I was reading Moby Dick at the time. I hate to admit that it was that late in my life that I was doing this, but anyway, I was. But also I was thinking about the jukebox every day because I was its victim. So I came up with what would happen if certain people wrote other people letters. So This one is Ishmael writes to Debbie Harry. Call me across ocean reveries, call me from against the spiles, call me at the Spouter Inn into the Wailing Church on time, call me with side lunging strides, call me your top 40 hit, hum through Scrimshaw comb, beat by Pelican Foot, call me the 18th sexiest protagonist, your blubber boiler lover, poet of the Horsehead doldrums. Call me anytime, C-Pen, your fiddle heart urchin, from CBGB's toilet and graffitied brick, call me Queequeg's bitch, Je m'appelle Ishmael in the voice of Sid Vicious, call me a Ted Bundy escape plan, an outlier's alibi, a Nantucket sleigh ride, roll me an ambergris, from narcotizing sightlines to Max's Kansas City, I'll never get enough. As Jericho was called to the Medusa, as Mocha stove the Essex, as dice of drowned men's bones, call me to the go-go, the Playboy Mansion, Rockaway Beach, or rock and roll high school before the trill of your high. Call me your #1 jawbone prosthetic, your heart of glass, your new wave, your stub or Starbuck or flask, your three-chord Tashtego, your dreaming Sunday cannibal, your 30,000 shark teeth, your humpback rhyme master. Breathe like a pod of right whales at midnight into my ear. I could be your stabilitas loci, your garden of amorphous concealment, your finny tribe or spiritual, your rapture. Okay, the last one I'm going to read here. Thank you. The last one I'm going to read here, I'm going to read because I think Michael Ananias, he's still here. Okay, good. Michael Ananias is in this poem. And so this is another OED. And so the thing that I really loved about working at the Vernon was people would come in and tell me not just about their own histories, but histories about places. And they would tell me, okay, this place used to be named that place. And before that, it was named this. And then this happened there. And then before that, it was named, you know, so it was like this whole layer of stuff, which I absolutely love. So, so there's that in this poem. But also Michael comes into this near the end because weirdly, he used to have a liquor gal person, what was she, Michael? Liquor store gal who was from Worcester. And so anyway, so that makes it into this poem as well. So this poem is called Namecouth. Namecouth, adjective, known by name, well-known, famous, notorious, again, rare. Let's say Maurice the Pants Man or Rizzuti's Goodnight Cafe. What used to be Old Billy's Lounge, now charred on Millbury Street, down from what was once Stony O'Brien's, where your Graham used to sit with her boyfriends in her 60s, drinking gin and giving you and your brother and sister quarters for the jukebox, now called Nick's, because Vincent and Nicole are so in love, says Captain Bob. Let's say the Greyhound that used to be Rafferty's, and before that, a name I can't pronounce in Gaelic, and where they say the baker was blown and shat that girl, and I wonder which corner or John and how much stench that place, that dark place where we all go to watch the World Cup with Richie Scales, alley bombs, bells and whistles. Everyone, you tell me, has another name or several better known than their own. Giant Jesus and Baby Jesus, Husky J and Bakery Joe, Trojan Mick and Pac-Man Pat, Lord Port Fat Ron, Polish Stosh, and the Warrior. Even in Texas, Michael mentions the Vernon, Dessous, his liquor store gal from the woo who gives him the 1,000-mile stare. She says, "Bucket of blood," and we were told to look away, cross ourselves in the street when passing that place. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Great reading there. Now we hear from Randy Prunty, who grew up in West Virginia and North Carolina and has lived in Atlanta and Boulder. He started writing at the age of 40 when he was set afire by Sun and Moon's Gertrude Stein Awards in Innovative American Poetry. He quickly found like-minded poets in the Atlanta Poets Group, where he attended weekly meetings for several years. His recent poetry has appeared in several journals, including Fence, Parentheses, New American Writing, Vault. Online, his poetry can be found all over the place and talking about strawberries all the time. Caliban, for example, The Tiny, Global Polemics, Where is the River, and Trilobite. Some of his visual poetry can be seen at Pomelon. 1 year ago, Blaze Fox published a book of his collected poetry titled Test Camp. Randy works as a bus driver in Marin and San Francisco and lives in Pinole, California with his wife, poet Elizabeth Robinson. Welcome, Randy.
Wow. Thanks, Mark. This has been great so far. Thanks to the other editors, too, that make up Lit Balm. And, of course, thanks to Maxine. And I have the privilege, I don't think anybody's shown the book yet.
That's true, that's true.
I'm going to read one poem from this. Also, I want you to see a little bit of what it looks like with the brackets and parentheses. And this one is called The List of Fatalities Includes the Book. Discourse equals the language of bees, the book reduced to paper and pulp. Post-historical dandies, madman and lover, give profusely the state, self-conscious, gives away its nothingness. An empty vessel slips on a veranda, economy as mysticism, the future cruel beyond the fence of the present. See how the edge slips over the edge. Pretty cool. Okay, I'm going to read one or two things from my book. Yeah, it came out a little over a year ago from Blaze Fox. And let me read two from it. This is poem beginning with a line from Julia Kristeva. The problem is the path strewn with traps. Fantasy becomes judgment, a singular situation clothed as trigger, as a gateway you can wish for but never imagine. Witness separate from privilege is you, as seen, seeming to intervene. Perhaps later, when fathers stop pretending they're dead, we can gift a while, like moss gifts a stone. When a gift not only transfers, but conveys. Not malady, just banality, sharp around the edges. The self is, by definition, selfish. A painter reddens the boundaries, a symptom of civilization ciphered by. Poem beginning with two lines from the Bible. And the tongue is a fire. It sets on fire the cycle of nature. Vocabulary flung up from mouth to join the flock, and impossible. The mouth pants, panting after, running around, never catching onto anything, but beckons a reckoning. The mouth speaks what the ears hate to hear, injurious. Let evanescence of the word point back to the tongue in opposition to itself. Okay, what I've been working on lately are sonnets, minimalist sonnets, so minimal that they are just one word per line. And I'm going to read some of them. Since they're so short, I'm going to read some of them twice. Evening sonnet. Water used to be wetter, rocks harder, God taller. The gravedigger concludes his memoir. Borromean knot sonnet. A three-circle Venn diagram, real, symbolic, imaginary. You in the intersection, looking for agency. Postprandial sonnet. Not all things nourish, but some things distract from the hunger. Blue philosophical poems. Primer sonnet. Black dog dreaming under the white table is catching up to the brown squirrel. Primer sonnet. Black dog dreaming under the white table is catching up to the brown squirrel. How to listen sonnet. The project is to place words at the limit. See how that horizon speaks. How to linger sonnet. Shadow memories stick with you the longest. I hope death leaves me forever backlit. How to linger sonnet. Shadow memories stick with you the longest. I hope death leaves me forever backlit. Superfluous sonnet. Sometimes I see all possibilities all at once, like Niagara Falls in a cup. Nature sonnet. A stump is a little tree the way this rock is a little moon. Nature sonnet. A stump is a little tree the way this rock is a little moon. Rear view mirror sonnet. Turns out you're never too old to feel abandoned. Wanted, a better history teacher. Good news and bad news sonnet. There are some days it really does seem like I'm composed entirely of others. I'm only going to read this one once, so listen carefully. Earworm sonnet. The wheels on the bus go round and round, round and round, round and. Semiotic sonnet. If you see a tow truck towing a tow truck, then there's your poem. The effective beast sonnet. Every grave is a groin at night. Gravity catches all things. Act out accordingly. The effective beast sonnet. Every grave is a groin at night. Gravity catches all things. Act out accordingly. Oars are made to float sonnet. Like anxiety, poetry must include the unknowable. And like infinity, we're already in it. Business district, floor store, yarn barn, vino depot, art mart, parka market, dollop shop, socks kiosk. Ordinary chatter sonnet. To speak is to grammar, the way a dog does and little dogs do. Alumni newsletter sonnet. Flying those fancy pants, hot diggity, here comes special. And everybody, pop the trunk. I'll read that one again. Alumni newsletter sonnet. Flying those fancy pants, hot diggity, here comes special. And everybody, pop the trunk. And this is my last one. Sculpting is subtracting sonnet. John Cade says silence does not exist. Gertrude Stein says repetition does not exist. Sculpting is subtracting sonnet. John Cade says silence does not exist. Gertrude Stein says repetition does not exist. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Randy. Before we move on to our next reader, who's going to be Keith Donnell Jr., I'm going to read one of Maxine's poems from Light and Clay, Without Resolution, it's called, and it's in square brackets, Without Resolution. Consider our planet a woeful cauldron, far-fetched utopia, oiled by power. Bargain away all but mirrors, even if sunlight stands in gleaming nothing but jasmine's March night scent, which slightly reeks with all the deaths. Are we counting titanic excess? The volume of the dust an eyelash holds. Very zen, especially the last two lines. Great lines. Now we are honored to have Keith Donnell Jr., who is a Salinas, California-based poet, book editor, and ghostwriter. He is the previous author of The Move from Nomadic Press in 2021, and his poetry has appeared in many journals and anthologies, including Poetry, KGB, and Best American Non-Required Reading. Keith's second poetry collection, Supreme Light, is out from Black Lawrence Press in 2025. Welcome, Keith.
Hi, all. Can everyone hear me okay?
Absolutely.
Pretty good? Okay. So first off, thank you so much for including me in this event. Maxine, she was not one of my teachers, one of my favorite teachers at State, and made that time just so valuable and just magical for me. Also, thank you for the book. It's a beautiful book. It's filled with beautiful poetry. I'm going to read Measuring from the collection here, which is on 105 if you're reading along. Measuring. The Book of Dust speaks of the infinitesimal green dust on fern fronds, scattered light of a candle, flickering in dappled shadow, bodies gathered in sunlight, an afternoon bed whose seam is the work of being, how, when you turned to me, your eyes suggested personal economies, known beyond words. Trapped in time, this story nods to the future, whose past still reflects how the gold beaters and silver threaders of ancient Florence would have paused in their work to notice our eyes, incandescent, as we passed under their windows. I love that poem. It's, so intimate and yet so expansive at the same time, really kind of collapsing that what we think to be a boundary between the two. So now I'm going to read some of my stuff. These are 3 pieces from, again, Supreme Night, coming out about a year from now with Black Lawrence Press. Eulogy. This final hour, this quiet place, alarm has come. Dim lit stairwell, torn from it, searing eye test, smoke, hope, notes extinguished, no wind, gone with us forever. 4 alarm down here. We were kids wandering, strung lead and fog, our home of bones, where his heart was and his people are still. The reforms lost footing. Now we're meat, once again in alarm to shard these last monuments. Rhythm, 4 alarms, lost cause fantasies, a sewer bin grace, used to those who crossed air, full volt, he ran, dove, defended our air. Dark nights in the melody of man, Fortunes faked, but nonetheless proud. Still braver, more gallant young shams. Then this here brother laid out before us now, so bright, shining and beautiful, so holy before sun, conquered, stale eyes. Brother Malcolm the pyre calls me too. Afro Amor icon, Afro Amori kin, was a mass tear to float my stem. We, real cool, alive between words, no known bodies returned, torn knee to sworn power, wars galore, half of all remains of men. Malcolm had stopped being a Negro years ago. It had become too small, too puny to wreck a word form. No, Malcolm was badder than that. Malcolm had become aggro, a field again, and he wanted no disparity, that all his people came to. The roar of those who wall, consider it their duty. Still, we laugh, we eat, we've grown down. To revive him, prisons of memory, to save ourselves by riding harm out of history of our turbulent times. Capital will ask, what alarm fires to budget cut in this stormy, controversial, and bold young crap's hand, and we wall miles. Frame this man, for he is not a man, but tandem, a sermon, a subverter, no anomaly, all that rumble young man rumbling, and we wall miles. They'll say he was half ape, an old attic slave, mind musty and sun-kissed, holy canon liberating evil and to dwell and smear and dismay. Delude no tattoos, my brother. Elude never God's touch. Humor. Assassinated with violent synths at any public funeral trance. For if you do you, were now him and you, if you truly knew harm, you, widow, wide, we missed so near him. Malcolm was our human donor, our loving. The brother sorely slayed is all missed, free bread, and we laugh a much braided rope. Consign these mortal remains to earth, our common mother, and fall, seeking core in the knowledge that what they mace, pin the ground, what he was and is, a brick, our own black shining brick, who didn't hesitate to fly because he loved us so. I ain't gonna see you no more. Traded favors, sweat night, fever lore, and it ain't gonna go smooth now, Medora. Field songs, the mission, flowing through my vision, but I ain't gonna see you no more. Silent precision creeping through master's kitchen, no, it ain't gonna go smooth, Medora. So muddled the melody, border states of malady, groundwater running clean, skimming cream off the dream, and I'll get home. Law-made property, auction, rapture, shatter plate, and I ain't gonna see you no more. Fought me, can't see, no knock warrant, cold slate, and it ain't gonna go smooth now, Medora. Was a no-name puppeteer, rain fell like overseer, keyholes to fantasy up quiet in the canopy, and I'll keep on. But I ain't gonna see you no more, Medora. Was never gonna go right this time. Okay. Now I have one more. Again, thank you so much for having me. Maxine, congratulations on, just a wonderful product, a reflective of a long magical creative journey on your part. This is called Why Didn't It Rain? When she asks if the man making masters is real, if the storm made of masters is real, you say, hot watch night breeze, born tender things, no-knock dreams, what it means, busted seams, sugar cane, why didn't it rain? The song careens, the stolen kings, the body steams, what it means, twisted trees, when it stains, why didn't it rain? Let no bone white light, no concrete sling, no perfumed cream, no noose moonbeam turn our eyes away. Why didn't it rain? Sweet baby girl, why didn't it rain? Rain on you, free taro, free sparrow, was a crooked game. No one heard the birds we love, all the pills I named. So we took it underground, and now, why didn't it rain? Made to run, black mold, black minds won't be explained. In this creeping rain, and the pills I blame, and the demons you'll slay, foreplay, why didn't it rain? Why didn't it rain? Their precious scales, shorn iron fangs, more stomach pangs, chain gangs, Klux Klans, book bands, insane. Why didn't it rain? And heirloom hair, the people sang, the midnight bang was just too much for one single vein. Why didn't it rain? From ivory sails to cut lifespans in distant lands, fangs, clangs, a trance where we'll feel no pain. Why didn't it rain? Sweet baby girl, why didn't it rain? Rain for you, shorn arrow, true marrow, right down the drain. With the slurs they flung and the kid they maimed, to the heavens we did proclaim aloud, why didn't it rain? Gotta run, sold, no doors, higher planes. In this creeping rain and the bills we'd gain was the truth of pain, wrong sound. Why didn't it rain? Why didn't it rain? Yes, the man making masters is real, my love, and the storm made of masters is real, my love. Yes, the man making masters is real, my love, and the storm made of masters is real, my love. But we be forged of doves. Why didn't it rain? Rain on you was narrow, too narrow, nothing ends the same. Not a bell unrung, not a curve made straight. So we circled the burial mound, and now, why didn't it rain? Final fold, blown out, 1,000 cranes in this creeping rain as we swerved in vain. But the truth so plain, like clay, why didn't it rain? Why didn't it rain? Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Why didn't it rain? Next, we hear from Paul Hoover, who's published numerous poetry books, most recently Owen Green, New and Selected Poems, 2021, and the Book of Unnamed Things, both from Mad Hat Press. Paul's the editor of 2 editions of Postmodern American Poetry, a Norton anthology, and the annual poetry magazine New American Writing. He's published the collection of literary essays, Fables of Representation from University of Michigan Press, and the Vietnam-era novel Saigon, Illinois, from Vintage at 88. His translations include, with Maria Branda, the complete poems of San Juan de la Cruz, and with Maxine Chernoff, selected poems of Friedrich Hölderlin from Omnidorn. He teaches in the creative writing department of San Francisco State University. Welcome, Paul. Is Paul there?
He is, he's just got to unmute.
Okay, I'm here. Sorry. I'm really glad to be here celebrating Maxine's career as a poet. She's been incredibly productive. I said I would take my daughter Corin to preschool, and by the time I got back 20 or 30 minutes later, she had written a poem. That's when she was right. She's quick, and she's steady, and she's brilliant. So what more do we need? So I'm going to read the Commons. Maxine also has a really fiery political consciousness. He goes after people on Facebook. I said, just don't give him your address. Yeah, and on Twitter. Yeah, don't give away your address. Anyway, this poem I think relates to public consciousness and citizenry. The Commons. It has a quote from Hannah Arendt. The house is never seen either by the eyes of the body or those of the mind. 1. Woods, meadows, streams shared by community in old German law, so green will have a dwelling. 2. The language was shared. They had it in common. Propositions were their tonic. Every morning they made love. 3. Without a public realm, freedom has no worldly reality. Despots banish people to their houses, where they speak in whispers. 4. In quotes, I miss the village green and all the simple people. I miss the village green, the church, the clock, the steeple. That's from a Kinks song. 5. People flee the city when buildings start to fall. Only rats and pigeons, we have them on surveillance. I had dreamed of it, so a threshold and a grave, all the world's a slum and we its shadow workers. Here to speak of ruin in an age of plenty, fresh kills filled with sofas, human flesh remains. Meanwhile, in Manila, children play a game, blindfolded in the dump, reaching out their hands. When tsunamis come, they also cleanse the world, everything flowing over, tumbling into grace. So a fool said on his way to church, let us praise the dead with chilling nonchalance. I had thought I knew how the world would end, but now I really know, all I really know is how to stare and point. No one goes there now. There is not a place. Our commons but a song, lost as it is sung. I changed my plan. I'm going to read some poems from Rehearsal in Black. And because I was going to read a Cento, but that's 100 lines. Too much. Two uncertainties. There's a quote before from Juna Barnes, there is eternity to blush in. Around the attic bird, the century is silent, gathers utter ghosts and scattered dust displays. Afloat in that window, not even a star approaches like a dog. Nothing is left to desire, rain in open cars, gasoline fires, history is ending. We are not, however, among those voices off. We are the ones in prose whose form is finally shapeless, except for these constraints. With the labor of planets turning, please bind us to a version of ourselves. This is the musician Sun Ra. His name was originally Sonny Blount, and so I wrote a poem about it. Blue differentials. As snow fills up a garden with blindness and license, Sonny Blount plays solo piano with practiced havoc, a sun god with no father. Against what sound does the hard light lean on fields of the future? In noise and in blankness, you are hearing a means of observation, brokenness and ocean, unreal but not untrue. In the bulwark of the moment, the worship of limit and a hint of a stride, and a hint of stride to rue the very day. Space is a place, but how should we name it? Beyond melodic, a love supreme finds worlds where you place them with thin percussive fingers. The the word's dream changes, a phantom reminder bending us sweetly at no loss of feeling. On a red rock desert previous to belief, structure suffers from duration, like John Cage weighing one note with nothing. The pale moon shines on the stone's full measure, on the rigid grasses of Spruce Head Island. The chill tone of knowing fleshed with being, a sheer cliff's oblivion or heart's high wall, where the best mistakes are made repeatedly and in number. I want to read from one from Poems in Spanish. It's poems written in English as if in Spanish. Intention and its thing. My father stands in a wheat field with his back to me. He's intent on distance and the sounds of early evening. If he turns slightly, I step to keep him faceless. I like to watch him watching the high clouds pass and the shapes of cars he's driven. The wheat is green. It's early in the summer. How can I show you this furious wheat whipping at its shadows, pressing hollow into swale, then regaining its composure entirely? His back is too large for the shirt he's wearing, and the shirt is too blue from a discount bin, the kind that slips from its hanger. It's a secret place somewhere in Ohio that was once mistaken for Spain. The fields are so flat you have to stand on tiptoe. That's all that I can tell you. This is what intrigues me. Twice I take his picture, once with the camera, once with my eye. It's the eye that remembers. He passes into image, into memory. Now he can die and be happy. His eyes full, the camera full, only the landscape anxious. And I'll end with 4 or 5 from it won't be that long. It's from Desolation Souvenir. It was I fell in love with the serial poem for a couple of books. By the way, there's an echo that comes through that you might hear the same line again. And okay. The present opens empty. You can't play dead for long. It makes people nervous. And death is so private, it misses the point entirely. Our amusements need us on stage and at the wedding. There's a way out of your senses, underground to the east, where the emperor's army was buried. Don't crouch in your grave, lie as flat as you can so it will know you're there. Genie, genius, spirit, mechanic means have struck, a blow you won't survive. Rival hours are passing, no bees in the hive, no hive, sound returns to its bell. Unreality's rare. The absolute, if there is one, the darkest thoughts are trees with a hint of light behind them. Life has been and is a miracle death discovers in the farthest well-lit room. What had been staggers back to its voice. Consolation roars, only the sound of life. Houses without doors. Moral fish and moral laws. Let me sink my teeth in that. Now that all is gone, this thought is on its own. Go, my carrion nouns, seek what you have found. And I'll read one more. No, I have to read 2 because it is a echo. Houses without doors. Did you ever see an owl in flight ever? But it survives in you from something you once read. It's terrible but true, unreality's rare. The landscape is changed by what we think we hear. Father will go far. Mother sounds like murder. Earth's tune is nearly perfect. Everything is reckless, easy, and worth living. A terrace, a tuba, but an honor, later horror, is a flower's delicate beauty. And the final one, sound returns to its bell. Identity is double, beauty is twice the trouble. 2 eyes in the mirror are fearful of the fact they're equal as 2 egos. Moonlight on the ground, frost on the window, I am now sufficient to the absence I imagined. No song can live without it. The present opens empty. The body is a fool, too pious, too solemn. A song on accordion fate doesn't understand. Thank you, and congratulations, Maxine.
Thank you, Paul. Fantastic. And next we hear from François Luong, who's originally from Strasbourg, France, but currently lives in Oakland. He has translated the works of multiple poets from France and Quebec, and François's work has appeared or is forthcoming in the Mississippi Review, the Canary, the Rusty Trope, New American Writing, Entropy, and elsewhere. You can find him online at François Luong, LUONG.com. Welcome, François.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Yes, I was already extremely nervous until I had to follow Paul, and then my anxiety shot through the roof. So if I stutter or mumble, you'll know why. I'm extremely honored to be reading with such a marvelous group, and I'm also very grateful to help Maxine celebrate the publication of her book. Maxine and Paul have supported me one way or another throughout the years as friends, teachers, and as publishers with New American Writing. I'm not much for public speaking these days, so I'll just read the poem location, which is extracted from Camera on page 75 for those who have the book on hand. That one. It starts with an epigraph from Anne Carson. After his death, she dreams of roses and bones. Under an alphabet of clouds, Earth's sweet breviary, we launch paper boats in an afternoon's penumbra. Skilled at turning, elephants feel the cold bones. Fumbling leaves on the junket to nowhere have a place in the story of day's circumference. When you leave, the grass will cover my eyes, and under my eyelids, dark orchids and wild grapes climbing. The air will stir in its shroud. So as Paul can attest, I am extremely lazy with my titles. I select a title and then just write a bunch of poems, which I will disguise as a serial poem. My current working title these days is Ways to Translate. For years, as a student of Stacey Doris, I would work with this book-based project, and I thought that I would change my way of writing a little bit and just do something that doesn't have a structure, but still falls under the title. So the first one starts with an epigraph from my friend Amish Trivedi, from his poem Spree. There are no resolutions, only more crises coming on. Out of this latest calamity, what of the red tip, mistaken for the absence of a red tip, plastic glistening and mistakable for metal? It's all about the finish, when there was none, out of two. The cruiser arrives on time in all time zones. Drop the prop near the body to explain its small shape. Oops. Then the chorus will find fault with the scene, how there should have been surrender, how the spine couldn't bend any further back without retaliation. Not a time for departures or a time for chance encounters. Hand in hand we followed the salt-devoured curvature of the concrete jetty, encircling the cove, divorced of the topography of the flow or the literal. Through rubble at a time, before morning at a time, for chance encounters. Along the shore of the bay, currents rest as long as the structure stands. So we're given hands, just split and hold. We're given tomorrow to draw the unlit windows of the city on the other shore. Time for many other tides. At some point, I lost some of my notes for my various translation projects and my textbook to learn Polish at the time when I was trying to learn Polish. And so I was at Jurassic at the time, and I just started writing about the things in the estate of the residency. So despite this singular city in which we find ourselves, this surface tension between this riverbank on which you stand and mine still cannot contract to a minimum elasticity of terms and allow for description. This bridge of 1,000 names must be dismantled. One attempted to ask for directions, one handful at a time. One attempted to ask for directions, one handful at a time, one morning at a time. The surface of concrete uncured and coarse. The footage will show otherwise. The other city's got no memory either. The body falls along the markings on the floor, the backdrop foreshortening the distance between the fall and the shot. I think my friend Sunny is in the chat, so if she notices like references to photography, she'll understand why. Instead of a destination on the outside chance, the thread continued to be spun from an empty museum, and the industry occurs from this room to another, through the walls or down the city. From the courtyard peering through the blinds, have you seen the cities on other spices? The room grows married to the curvature of the lens. We could move on from these construction lines marked in graphite and chalk to help with perspective and will, if not for the inherent contradiction of the materials at hand. So the Vice part is kind of a pop culture reference to the HBO Max TV series Tokyo Vice, Michael Mann, who also did Miami Vice. How am I doing for time?
Probably just one more, if possible.
Yeah. I feel there's always someone who needs to ask for how's that doing the time of the reading. All right. Held up through friction of a point against the surface, a simple figure cast in concrete, within the frame, cast in concrete, draws without drawing a mosaic of what stands behind it, stacks of books sorted according to a forgotten criteria, a ladder next to a door and the rest of the common area. Yet you raced from one room to another until there was no room left. Thank you. And now, Maxine.
Yes, that is quite true. Next we have Maxine herself, who is the author of many books of poetry. I think it's 20 now, Maxine, right?
Yeah.
And 6 works of fiction, one of which was a New York Times notable book of '93. Maxine served for 19 years of chair of creative writing at San Francisco State University, where she has continued as a professor. She's formerly co-editor of New American Writing, the winner of a 2013 NEA in Poetry Award, 2009 Penn Translation Award for co-translation with Paul Hoover of Hölderlin's selected poems. She is a 3-time runner-up for the North Carolina Book Award, taught at Exeter in England and at summer workshops in Prague and St. Petersburg, and she's read her work in Brazil, Scotland, China, Belgium, Australia, and England. Maxine is a native Chicagoan and was a founding board member of the Poetry Center at the Museum of Contemporary Art. In 2016, she was a visiting professor at the American Academy in Rome, and her most recent poetry collection, Light and Clay, which in many ways we're celebrating tonight, her new and selected poems, just was recently released by Mad Hat Press. Maxine.
Thank you so much. Thank you for everyone for being here. Thank you to Mark and Cassandra for running this lovely series. I want to give a couple more specific thank you. Thank you to Vicki Iflin and Frank Gallman, who have known me the longest here. Frank went to kindergarten with me. And then I met Vicki in about 7th or 8th grade, I think, and we were wonderful friends, and they live in Hawaii now. And thank you for coming and supporting me. I also want to give a shout out to Casey down there, who is watching this reading with her 3 babies. Not easy to do. And it's so nice to see her, one of my old lovely students, and many other lovely students are here, like Sandra Park and Francois and Keith, who we already heard from. And thank you all for coming out on a Saturday when there's a lot to do, and you could be watching a basketball game between, I don't know, Arkansas and New Jersey or something. I don't know. Here it's been raining a lot, so it's good to be in. And the other shout out I want to give was to Michael Ananaya, who was my first poetry teacher. Well, I was 19 and he was in his early 30s, and now we're both quite a bit older. But we're just as sharp, right, and handsome as we used to be. And I really enjoy talking to Michael and spending time with him and his friend Diane. We're going to be at the New Orleans Poetry Festival. We were just at the one in Louisville. That was a lot of fun. I've been kind of hiding from COVID for a long time because my son has long COVID. I'm trying to keep him safe. He's staying here right now with his wife. But recently I decided that if I'm not going to be miserable all the time, I need to get out of the house more. And especially since I actually retired from state about a month and a half ago. So I'm a free woman. And I also want to thank Lee, who is working on all my work and is following what I'm doing, and that's so kind of her. Great to see Jerome and Elaine, et cetera, and Sharon Mesmer, et cetera, and Elizabeth Robinson, wonderful poet. So many, I mean, everyone's a wonderful poet, so I shouldn't single out wonderful poets. You all are wonderful poets. I'm going to read solely from Light and Clay, and I'm going to read from not early work, my newest work back into my later work. And my newest work was written during the COVID shut-in, the year that it began. And what I did was reverse the sonnet form, so that rather than ending with a couplet, all these poems start with a couplet, and then the stanzas are 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's 14 lines that accumulate in that way. And a lot of the poems are about COVID. So here we go. They aren't all, but some are. Okay, this is number 10. You carry it with you like a shell, the heaviness of words surrounding what we've come to call environment. A student years ago had written of an ecology walk, his story set in the 50s, anachronistic term in finite time. I told him how we had thrown our bottles in the pond, lit matches in dried fields, ignored translucent moths, the texture of our skin peeling in summer delirium of sun. And now in surfeit we have lost, planet shifting on its axis to shoulder all the waste, redundant fracking zone, birdless vector of regret. What are you in this late day? What sound issues from the glass place you call mirror or self in a world of shattering? Call it zone or area N, how we make songs to suit your space. Next one, the older woes were beads of plastic, cramped with string and ocean tankers circling in the soup. We pastiched our needs, bought flotsam from the jetsam store to make a proper flag for life before our current limit. How nothing we predicted came to pass and to be, and everything we'd never guessed had come to pass. How friends were spared and not in the ellipsis of the season, sirens scorching air on radiant April days. On Hart's Island, ghostly work attends the barges of white shrouds, whose proper lives get captioned by their fates. To look at all the dying and yet not find the proper words attendant to the grief. How in the future they will sing the loss in ballads to their children of a world just opened as another died outside of myth and theory. Magnolia blanketed in dew, moss thickened gate of a mute and humbled spring. Okay, and on I go. Okay, so those are two from that first book of new work in the poem. I actually wanted to read a third one. I don't know where it went. Hold on one second. Here it is. Number 6. Time speeded up is comedy, and time slowed down its opposite. To know the ending is right is a nod to convenience. What can sympathy mean when children die at sea and parents weep and shake a fist? There is a border crisis where borders don't exist any more than perfect love or painless birth. The harms accumulate until you gather a lifetime of torn cloth. On the loom she knew the truth, as white and black combine their powers. The death of the artist, the death of the critic, the death of the language. The last speakers, 2 sisters who wouldn't speak to one another. The tragic comic gods own all the real estate, and in the end, the blackness too. Okay, so those are all from my recent poems, the new part of the new and collected. Actually, there's one more, I'm sorry, one more from this. I particularly like the ending of this, that's why I have to read it. But who is speaking now, and how to zoom the edges of the text? Can meaning take its storied place on suddenly vacant shores? The middle goes missing from the plot of how we train our minds to follow all but tragedy, mortality pressed behind the ropes of well-earned fear. While we try light and bleach in llama's blood to seek a cure, history shifts its weight. We pass markers for the losses we endure, whole Vietnams of endings, cities falling ill as fruit begins to form in winter's face, and seasons pass in reference to our moons. April 15th, lilacs bloom. The flower moon is pink and low in what we call a firmament of words and signs. We choose to read and voice our fears, though legibility encounters bewilderment, makes sense of time outside of time. Experience upended. The weak coyotes took LA, flamingos claimed Mumbai, and monkeys looted Nepali shrines. How the millions missing from the tale agreed to disappear. Okay, so those are my opening COVID poems. Thank you. Now I'm going to read from my next book, which is called Camera, which was really kindly published by Noah Eli Gordon after another press who was going to publish it suddenly rejected it for a very strange reason that I won't go into, because then I'll get all angry and upset and don't want to read my poems. Okay, this is called Nest, and it's again from Light and Coy. Always the quaking of relief, John Ashbery. In a swamp, the mangroves shade the nest of eggs blue as your eyes, who know the century's sorrow, as light knows the drift of a feather through turbulent air. You whose vows evaporate like mist from an ocean, where starfish and algae feel the touch of an invisible poison, in water's slow retreat of grace, and blueness is reflection of a steepled, latticed sky. Trellised world, which pleads in low tones for a window, where ledgers fill with threads and feathers of birds whose beaks crush certain berries in their ripeness, this small economy of need. Okay, and then the next one I'm going to read is called Semblance. It begins with a quote. In its qualities, a drop of rain is like the Nile, and that's from Mahmoud Shabistrari. A crow tends a branch on meaning's tree, where a single eye's limit meets trouble's dark road, deadpan map, stolid as Keaton's face. The story swells and grows motives as weeds disguise gardens in summer's amplitude. Nothing undoes day's grace until it is captioned or chiseled. Here where your whisper encounters the ghost of witness as a glass that holds water's history. I notice my name is Paul Hoover up here. I'm not Paul Hoover. This is slightly longer. It's called Findings, and it begins with a quote from the Bible from Peter. For all flesh is as grass. Number 1. Laced roots tease an opening when tendrils break through sleep, unfurled another spring in sluices and hidden stones, covered by earth's dusty glove. Language's lost home. How one word settles, another dies, twined with slow offering, woven as passage. 2. A cape of rain, season's slow reply, falls on lips, words chipped, a canopy of salt-filled sky, eyes wander, grass gives way and words bend earth, sky's whiteness capping afternoon. 3. Thigh of hill, breast of leaves, belly of witness. Wind takes pollen and dusky loam, hides turtle shells, mouse ears, the smallest fleck of bone. Late frost issues summons to blossom death, lost fruit falling. 4. Olive trees, ancient as times increase, a subtle force subtracts our burden. Eyes close on the scene a world can't witness. 5. Unmasked in trees, hollow owl, burden blossomed enacts their comedy in time. Lines rippling in space, hands filled with color, hiding in the iridescence green of wings. 6. Under skies in the marrow and sound of chambers closing in the leaves, there is a silence resplendent as ice. No words say you are not alone on the small shoals of belief. 7. Hemmed instincts crack the space shoal-laden with earth and time's increase. Geography fulfilled by clavicle and breast. Bridge of spine, the whispered path. River in the ear makes present what is chastened, loved, discarded. 8. To leave behind remnant or nest, dear amulet of birth, bird-tossed air, pungent with rain, a galleon cloud tossed, expressing a limit it cannot cross. His box of owls at the impasse of borders, her body a home to his wanderings. 9. To quote the oyster, signature in words worn down like fissured rain. Finding things mute, we speak volumes. Finding things broken, we suture them with phrases. She knits him a body. Her fingers spell words on his eyelids. Sorry, hold on a second. So a lot of the poems in this book begin with quotes from Christian Metz, who is a film semiotician. And this is one of them. And this also has a scene in it where my son took one of those free trips to Israel that you could take if you're Jewish. And he had no interest in being Jewish, but he had interest in traveling. So he went, and he found things rather horrifying. They, of course, they did not visit Gaza, but he visited Gaza. He went to Gaza. Then he didn't know how to get back. And going back, he came through Jerusalem and to the Temple Mount, where there were metal detectors and tons of soldiers with AK-47s everywhere. Begins with a quote. An event must in some way end before the narration can begin. Then doves and the thrush in the late afternoon of the swallows under the bridge, and the fathoms of sleep, and then the hollows of dialogue aspiring to contain the rich facts of what didn't happen, what it seemed to have. And then a disquisition on the luster of windows in the morning when a psalm is read, before lightning strikes the spire of a tall church in the city of your birth. And then centuries of robes of saffron or black, and vespers or prayer on cold granite, or at a wall where guards stand with AK-47s, and ghosts witness their attempts with sorrow, unlike human sorrow, which is a stream that evaporates when language interrupts its flow. And the ministry of a quiet voice when what is needed is a bell or a glass filled to a certain level and made to vibrate with a spoon. And before this ending, another ending, and after that another, and no agreement between parties as to whether the story is over or this is a respite between exhaustion and pleading. And the irises slowly, shallowly covered in dirt, emerge purple in spring, world without end, as words are endless, sending their tendrils towards the next refrain. What? What? Someone said something? I don't know. Okay, I'll go on.
No, I think it was Paul hiccuping in the background.
No.
This is also Christian Metz. All one retains of a film is its plot and a few images. And I argue basically in these poems that poetry is quite different. Their shadows carved in snow, ghost wanders in eternity, their habit of existence escaping our cognition until we surrender light and location, dried bark and dead leaves, decayed in their mystery, no more than summer's cloth lowered in the garden with its flowers, behind flowers. Lost on the screen is the morning he said this and you that, and the future hummed in the bushes like a slow, windowless fire. We haunt the world looking for ourselves, the ones who know the soft antler buds of deer. We forget the scene in the room of the said, where curtains and bed and light latticed as lace make your face unfamiliar. Mine too shrouded in layers of hope, which is as gauze, a semblance of our hiding. As we open to the other beyond seasons and borders, the world, with everything in place, held small truths, untold by any voice. A vista and a ledge, custom and dust of living spread. Our story obscure, the room shuttered, the lateness of the day a swift descents. You said a word that filled a momentary gap, lacing the world in tangled sound and stream. One more from this, and then I'll go on to my next book. This is called The Possible. The stationary blasts of waterfalls, and that's Wordsworth. The moss-covered birds I clean in the stream look at me clearly. A baby floats by. Moses? I am texting you when the dream concludes. So much to tend, oneself included, liminal clouds leaking cold rain. Location is anchor and ivy-filled absence, the spoken as dirt's surest witness. Awake to subtractions, seasons of smoke, Aleppo's horizons dropped from the sky. Your private museum contains this world, which doesn't make sense unless in a photo. But no, it is here, where silkworms tend to it, a milk-covered shroud cloaking its wounds. Okay, so then my next book is here, and here contained a lot of prose poems, but also some poems in verse. So this is what we have here are the verse ones. If you want to see my prose poems, there's another book from Matt Hatt called Under the Music that has a zillion prose poems. This is called Question, begins with a statement by Fanny Howe. A dream hesitates, it doesn't ask. You ask and it's given. 10 fingers, hands rotation, dusty rings of planets, saints who died thinking of 10 states of bliss. You ask and it's given. The cobalt message bottle, those who wandered green and bitter in the cobbled desert. The Bedouins all have cell phones, my son explains. Their son's listening to Michael Jackson. We do not want things to change, but they do. You ask and it's given, the perfect text, words of bird throat and hummingbird tongue, words of dolphins and shafts of comparable light. You ask and it's given. Tragic lady on the stairs whose hat flew off. Would Godard have liked our mad dash? We were always in films without asking. You ask and it's given. The irresistible sky, the sky over us, separately and together. We hear of bombs in another world, our world, the one that cracks so easily, that allows in the sweet and the bitter. You ask and it's given. The calm, the storm, the death, the waking, the asking, you ask. Next poem from this book is called Subplot. Lost on a night when reference suffices for human events, the slow distance between bodies reaches for narratives of innocence or crushes as fallen feathers. On a plank of sleep, he sees the empty tree, flown bird's narrow hotel of blue and leaf and fragrant wood, light and envelope in her marble hands. If reaching means proximity, life thinks otherwise, leaves books open to weather, pummels history with slow report. Explanations slip as diamonds in a mossy sea, or time, a science of feeling. Eclipse imminent, papered walls suffered with impunity, the loss of probable light. We are not alone with our discipline, the smooth stones we carve, from childhood to convergence to dawn. The next one I was going to read was one that Francois read, so I don't have to read it. So I will move on. And I'm glad Francois read it. So now I'm moving to the book without, and this all is every poem is an idea of the world missing some aspect of itself. So this is called Without Resolution. Consider our planet woeful cauldron, far-fetched utopia oiled by power. Bargain way all but mirrors, even if sunlight stands in gleaming. Nothing but jasmine's March night scent, which slightly reeks with all the deaths. Are we counting titanic excess, the volume of dust and eyelash folds? Maybe someone read that. Oh, well. Without a listener, this is an interesting poem because a student of mine told me how his grandfather, who had been a Castro affiliate, ended up in Castro's prison for about 20 years when they were no longer affiliates. And it reminded him so much of his grandfather's situation. But I only knew that after I wrote the poem. So without a listener, a voice speaks to roomy stars, deadpan witness, no call and response or supplicant's hope. All this hurts, the ocean suggests, as if wave could privilege ear's dumb gesture, or a ghost of a sentence learned to read its own dried ink. Also from this book, Without Memory, peach crate summers, ruby-throated nights, the blanching stars in winter's house, the past as license, limit, or ligature, a dozing soprano beginning her aria based on tax code and municipal bonds. Let meadows lie fallow and windows darken with snowstorm static. Maybe you'll freeze trying to forget how things were before they weren't. Without shadow. Death stutters in the voice of a judge, ostrich-headed predilections blatant and grave. The body asks for frost, the mind frontal watching the avalanche on bone's white page. An opaque wide space filled with zeros and feathers, limit abetting abstraction, gone with only one breath. And the next one someone else read, so I will go on to the next one. So that leaves that book, and we move into a very small book published by Omnidon called To Be Read in the Dark, from which I'll read a couple of poems. This is called The Box. You and I and the world in the box, blue as memory's alien air. You blue as the world, dust motes gleaming in the corners, historically rich in potential. The box is not the room's white curtains, nor the camera's closed eye. The construction of a sentence enters the box, leaves the world unsaid. Two more from this book. This is called God's Evening. He is tired of pity's mansion, tired of Sunday and its cautions. Even with loss, he is complacent. From where he sits, he sees a landscape, several lemons, and a book. Media studies is his interest. One of several he will tell you, no longer eager for approval. His children's sorrow, a bad novel. Touching his hair, he reads. A field of black sheep who know church Latin, a shipyard of vessels all called sentence, a tangle of words in a basket of laundry, a night like no other, blackbirds falling like endings, a gift unrecognized by grace, a barrel, only a barrel at the Stoics Hotel. They stay for years, getting lost in the language. And then we move on to my next book, which is called what? Which is called From the Turning. And this is the title poem of the book, Light and Clay. Begins with a psalm, a line from a psalm, Psalm 30:9. Will the dust praise thee? The page was a place before morality, before Gilgamesh, before the second prophet of revealed law. The page was a hybrid of value and valuelessness, a hybrid of community and selfishness, a foster child of devotion. The page was experience in semantic terms, a folie à deux, a terminal location. Cowboys and princes offered their lives. The cult of the dead worshiped there too. Lacking in value, we saw only faces. The page was a room, a picnic, a heaven, the utopia of words in a region of want. The page was a bridegroom, a bride, and a lover, the child of the union of religion and anarchy. I will reflect it, the page said on Sunday. I will absorb it, the page meant to add. Between death and rebirth, the page stood waiting. Words came to call, speechless at best. Okay, and then we move on to my last book, I believe, the last book in the collection. So the book, which is called Among the Names, started when I read Lewis Hyde's book, The Gift. And I started thinking of gift theory and the economy of gifts. And that brought me to sociology, anthropology, religion, and even a S&M room where people discuss being sadomasochists. And I'm going to actually read from that one in a few minutes. So the first one I'm going to read. No, that's the second. To bully the gods, we ask their blessings. The hedge priest bandies terms and conditions. I'll scratch your back, etc. As when in Italy she seeks to gain health by punching a saint repeatedly. Demonology too requires such motives as seen on TV, the afternoon type. The square-jawed man rendezvous with a woman in the tawdry cafe where actors are seen, but back to Egypt, where gods were bullied out of their tombs into legend and myth. Then on to prayer, a humble petition suggesting our reverence for what we can't own. I think two more, but this one's slightly long, and this is the one that's the chat room of S&M. So if you've never been to one, which I haven't until I wrote the poem, this is what it sounds like. And the title is Perfect Slave 2. And this is all quotes. Everything is a quote. Submission is a choice I make. I consider my submission a gift that can only be given from the heart. A gift you give without expectation of return. Keep your gifts. My Missy came to me needing to be owned because she has desires, wants, and needs that only I can satisfy. It can't be taken, can't be given or taken back. It's a commitment. Not a Fabergé egg that you keep forever, passed down to heirs. A box of candy, a gift you eat, then pass around. From the night I met her, I knew she'd be mine. She begged for my collar, much more than a gift. A true slave would not put limits on the submission. When one sits with a dying friend, is that not a gift of self? Submission, too, a gift of self. I was born with a submissive spirit. This is my gift, like a gift for music or painting. How many times have we heard the phrase, a gift of kindness? Trust is an act of faith, not a gift. I thought I was into sado, necro, bondage, and discipline S&M, but now I see I'm just flogging a dead horse. A Dami friend told me a story that she came home to find her 14-year-old flogging the dog, and the dog loved it. Like all relations, give and take and give. So that's what you find in the S&M room, which I never visited again, only to write. The last poem I'm going to read is about Prometheus. I'm right? Maybe I'm wrong. Let's see. Yeah. To animate his worth, Prometheus. To animate his worth, Prometheus vandalized the world. Fire and breath stolen in a dry season. The necessity of crime married foresight to hope. Beginnings added later, susceptible to hindsight. We say it started on that day or this, casting a spell, angelic or monstrous. All the same, our words the gift heat set on earth. How cruel a God to let us warm our hands and still to burn. We make a world required of incompleteness. In the image of imperfection, light learns its proper name. And thank you very much, everyone.
Well, thank you so much, Maxine.
Thank you.
I think light always finds its way, right? Wow. Well, thank you, all of you. Of course, thank you, Maxine, and thank you, Randy, Donna, Keith, Paul, Francois, and yeah, what a show. Don't forget, Light and Clay is available at bookshop.org and many other venues, so check it out. And if any of you would like to write a review or something like that, drop a line, let me know. So also next week, not next week, we're on the 23rd of March, excuse me, we have a show which I think Cassandra probably is best to explain to us.
It's Australian poets, some amazing Australian poets who often get together and write on similar themes, but it should be a corker.
Yeah, so we got Beth Spencer, Magdalena Ball, Willow Drummond, and K.A. Reese. And yeah, it should be fabulous. In the meantime, normally with this kind of length of a show, we wouldn't do an open mic, but we're just going to do a really brief one. Right, Cassandra?
Yep, we've just got 4 really short and some of our favorites who are obviously the people we see every week.
Sounds good.
So it was a dazzling show, and Maxine is a superstar. That's all I'm going to say about it. But John Wessock is going to read first. He sets the tone for our open mic. He's pretty amazing himself. John.
Oh, thank you. I found the poem from the pre-reading banter. It's called Empty Room. Only 2 other readers and friends sit at round tables. The MC in red bow tie, cummerbund, and white tuxedo greets me with a hug. Outside, immaculate picture windows, the HMS Surprise, sunset, ocean, and Russian foxtrot submarine. I read poems to an audience of tablecloths, napkins, and silverware. Empty chairs applaud, wine bottles demand an encore. Though few humans buy books, commerce declares this a failure. My mood bounces between joy and disappointment, like the notes on the MC sax as he and his band play jazz standards, Ellington, Louis Prima. A woman takes my hands in hers, tells me how much my poem meant to her. Outside I pass laughing couples and breathe sea air on the way to my car. What is the value of this night, of the warm breeze's caress, of city lights reflected on the bay?
Gorgeous, gorgeous, so visual, and never a failure. A reading of yours here, John, at Lit Balm. We love you so much. I'm going to quickly move on to Mark, who has something for us today. Mark Ducharme.
Yes, thank you, Cassandra. And she asked me to read, I was going to read a different poem, but she asked me to keep it short. So this one is even shorter than the one I was going to read. It's going to be in the next New American Writing. I don't know if Paul's still in the audience, but thank you, Paul. This is called Fashion Statement. Variations on a theme by Kenneth Koch, inspired by a line in a poem by Pete Spence. You are wearing the sea and its terrible promise, cleft shadows you'd picked up on a dare, luring librettists with awkward handbills, tuned to the shape of whatever you were. You were wearing raiments of lost folk protagonists, spouting guttural epithets toward the garments of gnarled workers whom you often spurned with vivisected answers, wearing surplices that got torn off by the sea. But I remember best when you wore an ink flesh tattoo alphabet, a scripture of distances, a tunic of windowless songbirds, the waning thought night gradually reveals.
Wow, you are wearing the sea and its terrible promise. What a great poem. Thank you so much, Mark. And to end our amazing contracted, I guess, open mic, we have our two favorites. We have Badass Brooklyn Cindy up first, and then we'll throw to Bob for a final word on the open mic. So Cindy, where are you?
Okay, I'm just gonna read my one-line Walt Whitman poem. You've all heard it, but I'm a copy editor by trade, in case anyone needs one. And even though I'm booked till the summer. And what I wrote was cliff notes for Whitman's Song of Myself, or how to pare down 52 stanzas into one. Grass, workmen, equality, yorp, 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 boot soles. Any questions?
I do love that one. Absolutely a cracker. Thank you so much, Cindy. And we always finish our open with the man in his kitchen. Bob, what have you got for us to take away from our open after our stellar features?
Okay, yes, it was a great reading. Okay, this is an information piece from my ongoing series. Information. 4 minutes into the plot, there are already 3 murders, a kidnapping, and a game of Russian roulette. All of the boats have already left the harbor. In their place, a man is signaling with a set of flags. He's only a clue when the story is told in French.
You gotta love it, Bob. And you're coming in from a very sci-fi looking kitchen with a bizarre green light. So that was an extra special moment for us. Thank you. And back to Mark.
Well, I think we can only conclude with one more of Maxine's poems, which seems to ring very pertinent in the moment, and it's called The News. The inhuman among us want to sing as others. They have a sacred place constructed of their crimes that surely corresponds to something in the world. Their subtle lack of grace makes it strange and rich, singing accusations in a pure contralto, which almost sounds like truth dressed up as a prince, or darkness curling under an open, well-lit door.
Mark, I wrote that poem first in thinking of Dick Cheney, but there's been so many successors since. Kissinger, who blissfully passed away, and the horrible orange thing that is trying to be president again. It's for those kind of people. Thanks for keeping.
Totally smell that. Smell that a mile away.
Yeah.
Thanks, Maxine. And yeah, what a wonderful show. Wishing you all a wonderful weekend. Hope to see you on March 23rd. And don't forget to get Maxine's book if you don't have it already. And we'll see you next time. Lots of love and poetry. Cheers, everybody. Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.